Hey, my name's Gene, and I'm an Adobe certified Photoshop instructor. I've been teaching college level classes in Photoshop for over 2 decades. I love Photoshop, and I'm eager to share everything I can with you. This course is built for absolute beginners to just getting started beginners. You do not need to have any previous knowledge of Photoshop to enjoy and learn from this video course. All you have to have is an interest in Photoshop or photography or design, and this course will help you, I promise. Of course, beginners can also include those who've been working with Photoshop for a little while, but they want to fill in any gaps in the knowledge they have. Pretty much all are welcome. Now, this course is less than an hour and a half long, so we're not going to cover every single tool and technique. That'd be pretty boring. Instead, we're going to work through a progression of real-world image problems that every photographer and designer encounters every day. We're going to get you familiar with all the core tools needed for you to get to work on your images right now with confidence. The images for this course are free for you to download. The download links are in the description below, so you can follow along with me step by step, and we'll work through these images together. I'm a big believer in learning by doing. There are 15 consecutive videos that build on each other in this course, starting with how to open an image or create a new document using presets or custom settings. I will cover all document windows and panels of the Photoshop interface to clear up any confusion about which one does what. I will cover zooming and panning through your image manually and with shortcuts, the best ways to undo and redo anything you've done. I will cover the best practices for saving versus saving as in your workflows, talking about quality and output. I will show you how to resize for web or print, how to straighten crooked horizon lines, how to maintain aspect ratios, or how to crop to a square. I even show you how to make a fake pano with a canvas extension. I will show you some basic dodging and burning, and then the last 5 videos cover layers themselves. And I'm going to give you the introduction of how they function and work. I'm going to have a short video on how to add a black and white adjustment layer with some spot color. I'm going to show you how to fix a low contrast image with a levels adjustment layer, how to switch the colors in a scene with a hue sat adjustment layer, and then for the final one, it'd be a more complicated layer exercise of showing you the best and worst ways to bring one photo into another photo, and then how to add text, how to rotate, use layer styles, all to make a simple ad. And above all, I'm going to be showing you how to do these things manually, but I'm also going to cover over and over and over the best keyboard shortcuts for all these techniques that will speed up your workflows 1000%. I do it with these flashcards that just pop up on screen. This is going to be a great course. And just so you know, if you like this one, there are going to be other courses and lots of short videos coming quickly, courses on layers, courses on retouching, blend modes, Photoshop for landscapes, special effects, black and white conversions, and my favorite thing, compositing in Photoshop, among so many others. So hit the bell if you want to be notified. So you know what time it is? It's Photoshop time. If you like this video, make sure you whack it, smack it, and crack-a-lack it. Yes! The first thing you'll do in Photoshop is either open a file or create a new file. So let's go over how to do both. You may see a start screen that looks something like this. If you wanted to open an existing image, you could go to the Open button on the start screen and click it. Or if you wanted to create a new image from scratch, you could use the Create New button on the start screen. But there's another way to get to these same commands from anywhere in Photoshop. So even if your start screen isn't showing, you can always go up to the File menu at the top of Photoshop and choose New or Open from there. Let's go ahead and choose Open from the File menu to open some existing image files into Photoshop. This will launch your Mac Finder or your Windows File Explorer, where you'll navigate through your file system to an image file and select it. This is my least favorite way. You see, we are artists and we like to do things visually. Look how small the icons are. So I would do all of this in Adobe Bridge, which I'll show you in a later video. Let's stay in Photoshop for right now. You could select one of the practice files that come with this tutorial, as I'm doing, or you can select an image of your own. If you want to open more than one image at a time, hold the Command key on Mac or the Control key on Windows and just select another image file. Then click the Open button. Both selected images open into Photoshop's editing workspace, which is called the document window. At the top of the document window, there's a tab for each open image, and the tab tells you the name of the image. The name is based on the file name. If you want to see another open image, just click its tab. So that's how to open existing images. Let's leave those open and talk about how to create a new image from scratch. You might do that when you want a blank canvas where you want to draw or paint, or maybe you just want to place multiple images on it. So this time, go to File menu and let's choose New. That opens this new document window. Photoshop comes with a lot of blank document presets that you can start with to find the one that works for you. Then select a document preset where you can customize your new document by typing in your own values like the width and the height, and also resolution and color space. First, select a category of documents from the top of the window: photo, print, art, illustration, web, mobile, film and video. I'm going to select photo. Next, choose one of the preset sizes in this section called blank document presets. If you don't see the one you like, there's an option here to view more presets, titled View All Presets. I'm going to select this preset, the Landscape Orientation 4x6. Now over on the right, all the details have now been set up for me, including the width and the height. If you decide that's not exactly what you want, you can type a different size into the width and height fields at any time. Any of these other settings on the right could also be customized too, but sticking with the presets kind of takes the worry out of having to figure out the technical details at the beginning, and these settings can be changed later in Photoshop if you need to. So to finish creating a new document, click the Create button, and your new blank document appears in Photoshop, ready for you to add photo, text, or maybe a shape. So now let's go ahead and go over the Photoshop interface to show you what each of the primary elements are that you need to be concerned with as a photographer, artist, and designer.
Yes!
Hi, in this video, I'm going to show you the major Photoshop interface elements. You can open any image you want. The first interface element to get familiar with is the document window, which is right here in the center of the screen. This is where you work on your images. Over to the right of the document window are the panels that have a variety of image editing controls. There are more panels than just those you see in this panel column. Some of the panels are hidden behind others. For example, here we have a panel group of the color panel and the swatches panel. If you want to see the swatches panel, you can just click its tab and that brings it forward so you can use it. You can go ahead and select a red swatch here in the swatches panel, and that color will be applied when you use other color features like the brush tool. There are some panels that aren't open on the face of Photoshop. To open one of those panels, go up to the window menu and choose from this list of alphabetical panels that do not have a check mark. For example, you can choose the histogram panel, and that opens the histogram panel. Currently, the histogram is showing all color channels separately, which is great for critical color review. You can close it by the double pointed arrow here. Another important interface element is the Tools panel, which is located to the left of the document window. It's this long vertical bar here. If you're not sure what a tool is, you can just hover over its icon, and in a moment you'll see the name of the tool and a brief tool tip. To select a tool, just click it. There are more tools than you see on the face of the Tools panel. You can click the disclosure triangle and hold any tool like the horizontal type tool here that has a little triangle at the bottom right corner, and you can see a flyout menu of related tools. So if you want to add text, but not in a horizontal orientation, but rather in a vertical orientation, you can just slide down to the vertical type tool in this flyout menu, select it from there. Now each tool has a number of controls called options, and those are found in the next major interface element, the horizontal tool options bar up here across the top of the screen. The important thing about the options bar is that it changes depending on what tool is selected. So because you have the vertical type tool selected, you see options for text, like this font size menu here. Keep your eye on the options bar while I select another tool. You can click on the brush tool, for example, and now the options have changed to offer brush opacity and blend modes, the two most important things you'll use aside from the brush size adjustments. Now let's go ahead and apply an option. One of the things you can often want to do when you have the brush tool selected is to change the size of the brush tip. And you can do that by using the brush picker option. You can click that option to open the brush picker. And then you can move the size slider in the brush picker over to the right to increase the size of the brush tip, or to the left to decrease it. And then you can click in a blank area to close the brush picker. Now you can move into the image and you can apply some paint. If you change your mind about that paint stroke, or whatever you just did in Photoshop, you can undo it by pressing the common keyboard shortcut for undo, which is Command plus Z on a Mac or Control plus Z on a PC. The last major interface element is the menu bar at the very top of the screen. And here you have multiple menus with lots of controls. For example, if you want to close this image, you can select Close from the File menu, and you can go ahead and close the image without saving since we haven't made any permanent changes. So that was a super quick look at the major features of the Photoshop interface. Now you'll use these over and over, and the things we covered were the Photoshop document window, the panels on the right side, the toolbar on the left side, the tool options that run across the top, and then the menu bar that runs on the very top. In this video, I'm going to talk about zooming and panning. At the very end, I'm going to share an advanced tip of how to do this with keyboard shortcuts. You see, zooming and panning are ways to navigate around an image. You will zoom and pan around your images often in Photoshop. So let's go ahead and practice working with the zoom and pan controls. You can open the image from the practice files that I've attached with the link in the description or in the course itself, or you can open a large image of your own. Zooming means changing the magnification of an image, zooming into it to make it bigger. Now, you may want to zoom in for a closer view of part of an image, or you may want to zoom out to see more of an image on your screen. The most straightforward way to zoom is to select the zoom tool located at the bottom of the tools panel, right here. Then go to the options bar for the zoom tool, where you will find a plus icon for zooming in and a minus icon for zooming out. Let's start with the plus icon activated, which is the default. Then to zoom in, move into the image and click. And each time you click, you zoom in a little further. To zoom back out to see more of the image again, go back to the options bar and this time select the minus icon, and then click several times in the image to zoom back out. If you want to zoom in again, go back to the options bar, click on the plus icon, and then clicking on the image to zoom in again. Now, you may get tired of going up to the options bar every single time you want to switch between zooming in and zooming out, so here's a shortcut that'll help you. When the zoom in the option bar is active, as it is now, you can switch to zooming out by holding the Option key on your keyboard if you're on a Mac, or the Alt key on Windows, and then click, and the image will automatically switch you back to zooming out. And then release your finger from the Alt or Option key, and it automatically switches back to being ready to zoom in again. So you can click in the image to zoom in again. And if you are zoomed in, you can use the fit screen option here in the options bar. This comes in handy when you're zoomed in like this and you want to get back to a view of the entire image in your document window. Just click the fit screen option and the entire image itself will automatically fit itself into your document window. Another option is this 100% option. Clicking this as soon as you enter the 100% view of the image, which is the best way to view an image when you're checking it for sharpness or you're doing detailed retouching for output. You can't see the whole image on the screen like me with this image, although you may not experience the same thing if you're working on a really large high resolution monitor, like a 5K monitor. But if you're on a small laptop screen, then you won't see the entire image most likely. So if you want to see a different part of this image with the zoom level, you're going to need to move the image around in the document window. That's called panning, and it's done with another tool, the hand tool. This is different than panning with a camera, where you're using a slow shutter speed and you're moving your camera at the speed of your subject going across your screen so the subject stays sharp and the background has this nice blurry linear feel to it. That's panning with a camera. I'm talking about panning inside of Photoshop. Yes! So you're going to go back to the tools panel and you're going to select the hand tool, which is here. It's just above the zoom tool. You will then move into the image and notice that the cursor has now changed into a hand icon. All you do is click, drag, and move the image in the document window to a place that you want to see, and then you release the mouse. When you're done checking the sharpness here, and you want to go back to the view where the entire image is on the screen, you can go up to the options bar for the hand tool, and there you will see the same fit screen option that we had for the zoom tool. So you can just click fit screen in the hand tool options bar, and that takes you back to see the entire image in your document window. Now, another way to zoom instead of clicking continuously, go back and get the zoom tool in the tools panel. Okay, now click and hold in the image and it will zoom continuously. You can zoom all the way in to see the pixels that are the building blocks of the image in Photoshop. The size of these pixels can affect the image quality of a print, which is why image resolution is such an important topic, especially for printing something. I'll talk more about this in later videos. But remember, we are not resizing the image right now, and we're not changing its resolution. We're basically just zooming in and out of the image. Now go up to the options bar and click Fit Screen so you can see the entire image on your screen. Now here's some advanced tips. Let's say you're working with another tool, maybe the brush tool, and you're painting in a small area and you don't want to switch out of the brush tool over to the zoom tool just to zoom in. There's a shortcut you can use instead of the zoom tool, and that is just hold down the Command key on a Mac or the Control key on a PC as you press the plus key on your keyboard. Every time you do that, you will zoom into the image. If you want to zoom back out, hold the Command key on a Mac or the Control key on a PC and press the minus key on your keyboard to zoom back out. Another important tip is you can temporarily access the hand tool by holding down the space bar to pan around an image. And then you can hit Command or Control 0 to fit it back in screen. Command Control 0 is my most favorite one. I use this all the time with every single image I open in Photoshop. It's just so much quicker. All right, so that's an introduction to zooming and panning, showing you how to navigate your images as you're working on them in Photoshop. And you can close this lesson without saving. We didn't do anything significant. All right, take care.
Yes!
In this video, I'm going to show you how to undo and redo any of your edits, and I'm also going to show you how to use the history panel. In Photoshop, you can change the edits that you make to an image with the undo and redo commands. This video will show you how to undo, how to redo, and how to step back in time as you're editing. You can follow along with this file for this tutorial, or just use an image of your own. The link for this image is in the description, or you'll find it in the actual course. Now let's make some adjustments to this image. Okay, so the first thing I've done is I've opened this image, right? And I'm going to add a levels adjustment layer and adjust the contrast by dragging in the white and black point sliders. Now I'm going to add a black and white adjustment layer. So let's say that you want to get rid of that last adjustment you just did in Photoshop. In this case, it was making the black and white adjustment layer. So to make that disappear, the quick way to do it is just to use the keyboard shortcut, Command plus Z on the Mac, or Control plus Z on Windows, which I'll do now. Then the black and white adjustment layer just goes away. Now I can bring it back by pressing Shift plus Command plus Z again, or I can use Shift Control plus Z for Windows. So these two keyboard shortcuts are a toggle for undoing and redoing the last thing you did, whatever it was. So that way you can kind of see a quick before and after to see if you really like it. Now, if you prefer to use a menu command rather than the shortcut, you can go up to the edit menu and there you can choose undo. Photoshop will even remind you what action you're about to undo or redo. Now, what if you want to undo more than just one step? Well, in that case, just keep hitting Command or Control plus Z. You can do that up to 50 times by default now in Photoshop, and each time you're stepping back one step in time. There's one more way that you can step through time in Photoshop, and that's by using the History panel. The History panel is located here. If you don't see yours, go up to Window and go down and put a check by History. I'm going to explain this panel by moving down to its bottom bar until I see a double pointed arrow, and then dragging down so we see in this panel a separate bar for each step that I just took on this image. So we see where I opened the image, where I adjusted the contrast with levels, and where I added a black and white adjustment layer. Go choose the brush tool. Now keep your eye on the history panel as I make an X stroke on my image. Notice how my thing was just recorded in the history panel also. Now the beauty of having these states in the history panel is that you can step back through them one by one like this. Imagine if you had 50 in here. Now each time you do that, everything in the image changes to the way it looked at that specific state at that point in time. Now you can also step forward or jump forward in time in the history panel like this. The two things to keep in mind about the history panel: if you do go back to a previous state, like let's go back here, and then you do something else like paint with a different color in this area, keep your eye on the history panel and you'll see that everything after that state is now gone. It's totally disappeared. It's basically rewritten history. The second thing to keep in mind is that when you close the image, whether you save it or not, your history will disappear. And the next time you open the image, the history panel will be cleared out and it'll be ready to start fresh. Now, I've been using Photoshop for 20 years, and between the keyboard shortcuts and the specific way I use the layers panel, which I'll cover in detail in another video, I rarely ever use the history panel. And by rarely, I pretty much mean I almost never use the history panel. But it may work good in your workflow, so I wanted to show it to you so you have an access and a knowledge to all the tools in Photoshop to make your images the way you want them to be. Either way, you're going to have lots of flexibility to correct any mistakes and try all kinds of creative approaches as you edit your own images. So I hope that helps. Take care.
Yes!
In Photoshop, saving is such a critical component of your everyday workflow for photographers, designers, and artists. So I want to make sure you're doing it the most efficient way possible. I'm going to cover the file extensions .png, .jpeg, and .psd. I'm going to talk about quality settings when you do save versus save as and JPEG. I'm also going to cover local versus cloud saving. So let's get started. So the first thing we need to do is open an image in Photoshop. And in previous videos, you've heard me say that going to File and Open, though convenient, is probably one of the worst ways to do it if you want to do it visually. And we're artists, so why wouldn't we? Go down to Browse and Bridge. It's going to open up a nicer window where you can scale up the image size of the thumbnails. You can click on any one you want. And when you're clicking on one, it loads over here in the preview panel. And you can actually click with the magnifying glass and it will launch a loop so that you can check the detail and the focus of an image before you open it. There's so many reasons why I love Bridge. I'll get into that in a different video. Right now, I'm just going to double click. It'll open the image. I'm going to click Fit Screen because I look down here and I see I'm only at 33% of its resolution. So let me maximize my real estate here and really fill my screen with my image, whatever size that is. So here's the thing about saving. You need to do it often and regularly. Right now, if I were to go to Image Adjustments and convert it to black and white, and this is actually a black and white conversion, not just automatic desaturate, which is very different. Let's say I want to make her dress. It looks a little gray. Let's make her dress a little bright. That's too bright. I blew out the highlight details. Somewhere in there. Maybe make the sky a little darker for added contrast. I click OK. And then I say, ooh, I love that. I want to save it. So I go back up to File, go down to Save, and well, I saw up here that it was saving, but it didn't ask me any questions. That's because it knew where to save it. And the bad thing is it just overwrote my file. So look at that. This was an original JPEG out of my camera. I don't get this back. Like, this is gone forever as soon as I close this file. I can never fix it or go back to my original. That's why it's so important that you come up with a workflow for your saving. Now, luckily in a previous video, I've already learned that I can hit Command or Control Z and it will undo the last thing I did, which luckily was just that one thing. So now I can go back up to File and Save, and I'll go back to Bridge. Okay, whew, that was really lucky. For a moment there, I thought I had lost my image, but I haven't. So let me go back to Photoshop. Now, let's say I want to do the same thing. Even though I know this is destructive, I know I just need to do a simple black and white conversion. I know exactly what I want. So I want to make that dress bright. I want to make that background darker. I'm going to click OK. But this time, I'm going to go to File and Save As. How do I want to save this? I'm going to come up by this .jpeg, and I'm going to click to the left of that dot. And I'm going to hit V2, which means version 2 for me. And the format automatically populated as JPEG because that's what was there before. There are no layers, so it can do it. And it's going to maintain that sRGB profile, which is great for the web. Because it's a new file to be saved, and I'm saving as JPEG, it's going to give me some options. Typically, just always keep it as a quality of 12 and click OK. All these other things are default, and they're the most optimal. Click OK. Go back to Bridge. Now I have a second version. As V2 has the same name except for that V2, so just keeping them in order so I can see them. Reopen this image, and then I was like, I want to do the opposite. I want to make that dress dark. Let's go ahead and pull it darker, and let's make the sky brighter for more contrast. I really like, that's a crazy look, but I like it. So I'll go up to File. Now, if I click Save, it's going to overwrite the original file again. So I've always got to go to Save As if I want to save a different version. Click to the left of the JPEG, hit V3, populate as JPEG, sRGB, click Save, click OK, go back to Bridge. Now I have a third file. So I have 3 files, my original, this one, and this one. Now let me show you something. If you want an editable working file, use adjustment layers. Now remember, all of these adjustments are destructive. It means once you do them, save your file and close it, it's locked in forever. It's baked in permanently. But you can get access to all these same things as forever editable adjustments, non-destructively, by coming over to this adjustment tab. If yours isn't open, just toggle it open. If you don't see it, go up to Window and just put a check mark beside it. So here I can just click on the black and white adjustment layer, and it's going to add a layer with the layer mask. So I get the same controls. I can still make that dress dark. I can still make the sky light. Now here's the interesting thing. Watch what happens when I go to save. It's right now a JPEG, and I'm not doing save as. I'm going to just save. Because it's never been saved as a Photoshop document, it's going to automatically pull up the Save As dialog box because it's never been saved. And it changed it from a JPEG to a .psd, which stands for Photoshop document. That's the native file extension for Photoshop that has layers. Now remember, you can share JPEGs with anybody. You can share PNGs with anybody. But Photoshop documents, .psd files, can only be shared with people that have Photoshop. The great thing about Photoshop is it doesn't compress your file, and it also maintains all editability on every layer that you save. So notice it changed the format automatically to Photoshop. I could change it back to JPEG, but it's going to flatten everything and I'm going to lose all the benefits. So it auto checks layers, and I'm still going to leave that sRGB profile, and I'm going to click Save. Now here's the thing I want you to see. When I come back to Bridge and I check out my images, these two are the same. So I'm going to click and just drag it over so they're visually side by side. This one's the JPEG. Look how big it is. It's 3 megs. I could easily email this file. This is a small file. Look at the .psd, which is essentially the same file. It's 104 megabytes. Do you see the difference? Because Photoshop does not compress your files. You have much more editable information in there to work with. .psd is the perfect working file. JPEG is the perfect export file. Like you're exporting it, you're sharing it, putting it on the web, on social media, Instagram, whatever. So again, I wanted to show you quickly that if I were to come to File and Save As, I've been saving everything locally to my computer, but we now have a Save to Cloud Documents button, which means it's going to link to your Adobe account so that you can save to the cloud and share between multiple devices if you're working on your iPad or your computer, or a workstation at work and a workstation at home, or someone else's workstation. You'll be able to share that document everywhere. I have a whole separate video for that, but it's something I want to make sure you're thinking of. Yes! So in this video, I want to show you how you can resize an image for either web or print, and the best way to save and save as your files to protect your workflow. I'm going to double click this image, which you can find in the link in the description if you want to use this one, or you can download it with the course itself. This is coming in at 33.33%. I'm going to hit Command or Control 0 just to fit it in the screen so I can optimize my real estate. And no matter what size monitor you have, whether it's a small 13-inch laptop or a big 5K 27-inch monitor, you can always use Command 0 to fit it in your screen so you get to see all of the image at once. Now, I have no idea how big this file is. The way you tell is, well, first you can look down in this left document area. You can toggle this open, and there's a lot of different things you can see, but I always like to leave it at the default to know what size my image is. This is a big file, 74 megs. It means I can't email it, I can't upload it to the web, I cannot upload it to any social media sites. It needs to be downsized. Now, if I click this, it'll give me a quick idea of how big it is based on the width, the height, and the resolution. The only other place to find that is go up to the image menu and go down to image size. This is going to open an image size dialog box that you can grab in the banner bar and just move it wherever is most convenient for you. Now, if it's too big or too small, you can hover your cursor on the outside right corner and just drag it to whatever format is best for you. Again, it's reminding us how large the image file is. The dimensions based on pixels is fitting it to the original size, which is totally perfect. Notice there's a chain link icon here. This is basically linking the width and the height to maintain the aspect ratio. If I click that chain link, see these lines disappear? This is what it looks like if I were to do that. Now watch what happens if I were to change this to 3000, which is about half the width. Do you see how it squished the image? It's because it lost its original aspect ratio. So you always have to leave this chain click to maintain the aspect ratio. So now if I were to change this to 3000 pixels, notice it maintained the original aspect ratio. Now if I want to save this for web, I need to make sure this is set to pixels. If yours wasn't, click the disclosure triangle and choose it. Most likely yours was at inches if you're in the West, but there's a lot of other measurement output options here. So if I want to upload this to a website, I know that I need it to be 800 pixels wide for this particular site. And that's going to resize my height automatically. And it's doing that because my resample box is checked. And it's going to interpolate the pixel information, throwing away image data that I don't need. See, it reduced it from a 74 meg file to like a 1 meg file. So if I click OK, it physically resized my image. If I hit Command or Control 1, that's 100%, at least on my screen, which is a big screen. So that's why it looks pretty small. But I want to save this. If I were to go up to File and Save right now, it would overwrite my original JPEG because this is still a JPEG. I haven't changed anything else but resize it. I need to remember to always choose Save As. I'm going to open a dialog box. And what I want to go and do is click to the left of that .jpeg. And since I know this is for web, I'm going to hit underscore and 800px. That's my system for letting me know that I've resized this to a certain width-based dimension. Since it is for web, I am going to leave the embed color profile sRGB checked because you always want sRGB for anything on the web. I'm going to click Save. It's going to open up a JPEG option quality dialog box. Basically leave everything a default of maximum of 12 for now and leave all the default format options for now. Just click OK. I'm going to go back and look at this at Bridge and look what it did. It added the image right beside it, and they visually look the same. If I hadn't put this underscore 800 pics, I wouldn't know which one to click on. But the great thing about Bridge is I can click on an image, like this one is selected, the original, and I can see how large the image file is. But if I click on this image, I can see, oh, this is the one I resized 800 pixels in the width, because it tells me in the metadata over here. Let's go back to Photoshop. Now I want to save one for print, but I don't want to open up the original and start all over. The last thing I did was change the image size. So I can undo that last step by hitting Command or Control Z, keyboard shortcut, or I can just come up to Edit, and whatever the last thing I did was, it doesn't count saving as a thing, just so you know, because you never want to undo your saving. The last thing I did in Photoshop was image size. So I can hover over here and I can see I'm back to all my original image size. So now let's go up to image size, and I want to make a print. So I need to choose inches. You should base all your information for printing on inches, again, if you're in the West. Let's say I want to make a 4x6 print. I'm just going to type 6 inches here. It automatically reconfigured the aspect ratio and figured out the height for me. Now here's the thing. If I'm printing, the default resolution should be 300. I'll explain that in much more detail in later videos, but generally anything for the web should be at 72. But again, if you're identifying the width and height in pixels, that resolution doesn't even matter. But if you're sending something for print and you're figuring up your image based on inches, resolution 100% matters, and 300 is a great go-to. Leave resample checked. I can see my image still was shrunk in size, and I'm gonna click OK. I'm gonna go to File, Save As. Now I'm gonna click to the left of the JPEG, remove the 800 pixels, and again, you'll come up with your own workflow, but I'm just gonna name this 4x6. I don't want an sRGB profile. I'm gonna leave it at its higher Adobe 1998, which is better for printing. Click Save, just click OK, back to Bridge. So now I have a small web one, I have the original, and then I have the 4x6 print. Now the reason I like this workflow of naming my files, what I've done, here's why. Let's say you haven't gotten used to Bridge yet and you don't use Lightroom. Let me close that. If I were to come up to File and Open, look what happened. If I hadn't have given myself some indication as which one I resized, like let's say I'd name, like notice how these are all the same file name, so we want them close together, but I'd name one A, B, and C. Unless I have a format of, well, A is always the original, B is always the web, and C is always a 4x6 print. If I haven't established a workflow, I wouldn't know what this was a week from now. But here I can see, because I can't access any metadata quickly from right here, but I can see, oh, here's the 4x6 one. That's the one I want. Anyway, I hope that helped. If you like this video, make sure you whack it, smack it, and crack-a-lack it. Yes! In this video, I want to show you how you can quickly straighten a horizon line in Photoshop. So the first thing you're going to do is come over to the Tools panel on the far left, come down to the eyedropper tool group, and then click that disclosure triangle to open the group. You're going to see the ruler tool. This tool is actually set up to actually measure things inside of an image, and you can assign the distances and measurements to get accurate measurements within a scene, but photographers use it just to straighten layers. Watch this. Notice how my cursor changed to a cursor with a ruler. I'm just going to click on the edge of the horizon, hold down my click, and just drag a line following wherever I think the horizon is, and it's just a visual thing. So visually, I think I'm pretty much on the line. I'm gonna let go, and notice how that line stayed from the 2 points. Just go up to the tool options bar and click straighten layer. How awesome is that? It automatically straightened my layer. But what did it do? Make Command minus just to zoom it out a bit. Notice all these transparent areas it just created for me. Now I've got to fix those. Here's a quick way to fix this kind of situation. If you go over to the magic wand tool in the toolbar, it's right here. Click it. And again, if you don't see it, hold down the disclosure triangle and choose it. I need to select each of the transparent areas on the 4 edges of the print where it basically rotated the print. Now, the first thing I need to take a quick look at is the tool options bar. If I have contiguous check, it means I'm gonna have to shift click on each individual area of transparent pixels. But if I leave contiguous unchecked, basically Photoshop is going to find every transparent area if I just click one of them. So watch, I'll click this one and it clicked all of them. Do you see that? Now I need to zoom in. So I'm going to click on the zoom tool, click, 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 click. So you can see it's selected only the transparent areas, right? So for this technique to work, you need to go up to select, modify, and expand. Now this is totally based on how big your image is. This is 68 meg file, so I'm going to go 5 or 6 pixels. I'm going to click OK, and you see how that expanded my selection? Essentially, you want the selection to kind of bite into whatever it is you want to use to fill this transparent area. Now I hit Command or Control 0 to fit in screen, and now I'm going to go up to Edit, down to Fill. It's going to open a Fill dialog box, and what I want to choose is the contents. hit that drop down arrow and choose content aware. This tells Photoshop to be aware of the content around the image. Use that content to fill the transparent area. Leave the color adaptation checked, leave all the blending mode set to its default, and just click OK. And Photoshop's going to do the work for you. This is an organic image, so it's going to fix it pretty straightforward. Click Command or Control D to deselect, or if you haven't learned your keyboard shortcuts yet, just go to Select, Deselect. And again, right here, it reminds you what the keyboard shortcut is. There we go. It did a great job. I don't see any weirdness anywhere around here. So you would want to save this image because we'll use this in our template if you're actually in my course. And again, the way to do that is go to File, always go to Save As so you don't overwrite your original, and come up with your own system. You could do Final, you could type After, whatever system you want. And again, this is for web, so leave the sRGB profile checked, click Save. Now notice what happened. Because I made an alteration, it converted it from a background layer to just a layer. And notice what it by default did. It converted my format to .psd, and I don't want that. Essentially, I want this to save as a JPEG. So to make it save as a JPEG, go back to File, Save As. You leave everything else the same, but you want to drop down in this format area and choose JPEGs. It says it can only be saved with a copy. That's because JPEGs can't handle layers. Just click Save. Okay. So when I go to load this into my template later, I'm going to grab the JPEG one. Yes! In this video, I'm going to show you how to crop an image to a different aspect ratio, specifically how to crop to a square. I'm also going to show you how to quickly straighten a horizon line. You can open this image from the link in the description or download it in the course. Once the image is open, come and choose the crop tool. Always going to go to ratio or original ratio. It's putting a bounding box automatically around it. And if I grab one of the corners with my cursor, see, I can drag it in. And notice how it's maintaining the original ratio is indicated by the tool options bar, which means no matter what I do, it's going to stay at that same format of width to height as far as ratios go. Now, if I want to do something different, if I want to freehand it, I can grab just ratio, and then I can make it any size I want. Now, right now, it's doing a ratio of 1:1. So I would clear that. Now my ratio can be tall, or maybe I want to make a banner for a website. That I have total control over how I crop my image. But I'm going to go back, and I'm going to choose a 1:1, which is one of the presets. It gives me a square, and I'm just going to drag this out so I have a bigger square. And I click inside to move it around. I can actually use the rule of thirds guidelines here to see that my horizon isn't perfectly straight. So here's another way to straighten a horizon. Hover outside of the crop. Notice your cursor will change to this left and right pointing arrow, and then click. You're going to get a much smaller grid pattern, and you just kind of visually rotate it, just visually align the horizon with one of those straight lines. If you can't tell, like you're having a hard time and you're having to waste a lot of time redoing it, if you're having trouble seeing it, just come up to View and turn on your rulers. See the rulers that populated across the top and the side? If you click inside the ruler and drag down, you'll drag down a guide that doesn't affect your image. It just gives you something to base something on. So now when I click outside my crop, I see my hard horizon line with that blue line, and then I can rotate it until it matches. I can let go. I can click inside my image to raise it up some if I want to, or I can crop it a little more. Like I totally get to choose what part of this image I'm getting. I'm looking at the diagonal here, and I'm thinking I like to have a bit more of that diagonal. I don't want my horizon in the middle of the screen, so I've got to use a balance. Something like that. Click OK. I'll choose the Move tool, and I'll click on that guide and just drag it out of my way so it'll disappear. So now I have a straightened horizon, and this has been cropped to square. And again, I'm just going to go up to File, Save As, and I'll put SQ for square. Embed the color profile of sRGB because you'll use this later in a template for the course, and click Save. Okay, that one's done. Yes! In this video, I'm going to show you how to increase the canvas size, which is different than increasing the image size. You can open this image from a link in the description or download it directly from the course. Okay, once you have this open, go up to the image menu, drop down to canvas size instead of image size. Okay, now we've got some math to do. What's 83 inches times 2? I'm not great at math, but I think it's about 166 inches, 0.666. Totally kidding. I had to do that on a calculator. And I want this to be left justified. If I don't left justify it, watch what happens if I leave this in the center as opposed to over here or over here. Command 0 to fit in screen. It basically left my image in the center, and it added this canvas to each side. Well, that's not helping me. So I'm going to Command Z to undo that. And notice what else it did. It basically kept this image flattened to my canvas. I don't want it to do that either. So I'm going to Command or Control J just to duplicate it while I'm resizing the canvas size, which always works on the background layer, but I selected the background layer just to show you. Go back up to image, and I'm going to go to image size, and I said that was 166.666 inches. Now, what am I doing wrong? Because you're going to do this. I'm actually on the image size. So if I click this, all I did is I made my file giant, right? From 68 megs to 274 megs. I'm going to Command Z on that. Go back. Canvas size. See it? This canvas size dialog box. Enter those crazy dimensions and choose left justify. Wherever that circle dot is, that's where the edge of your image is going to be put. And the canvas extension color, here it's the background, and here it's telling us it's white, which I can see it over here. Remember, this is my background swatch in the tools panel. I'm going to click OK. This is a good image that will allow some stretching to happen. Now, it looks like the horizon line's a little crooked, but let's fix that in a minute. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go up to Edit, Transform, Scale. I'm going to drag this and see what it's wanting to do. It's wanting to enlarge the image proportionally. If I don't want it to do that, a lot of times you will, but if you don't want it to do that, just hold down the Shift key, and whatever side you drag, it's going to stretch, keeping everything else the same. So I'm going to stretch it to there, and this is an insane amount of stretching just to get that up front. You can't do this with most images. This particular image kind of lends itself to that kind of stretching. I can Command minus just to shrink it down a touch. Now I'm at 25%. If I grab the magnification tool, or I just come up and click this zoom to 100% button, it'll quickly zoom me to 100%. Remember, I can, instead of clicking the hand tool, if I hold down my space bar, it temporarily turns to the hand tool so I can pull my image around. I'm not sure you can see the digital noise and artifacts, so I'm going to zoom in to 200, 300, 400%. And again, you typically don't need to zoom in more than 100% because you won't see it with your naked eye at its actual dimensions or in a print. But I want to make sure you can see this noise, and I want to show you how to fix it. Go up to Filter, go down to Noise, Reduce Noise. It's going to open a dialog box. It keeps it zoomed to 100%, but again, you too can zoom in more by clicking this. I'm at 400 here. Automatic hand tool, so I'm going to pull it down to the sky, same as in the big image behind. All right, now watch as I don't need details in this particular scene. I want to reduce the color noise, and I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to check Remove JPEG Artifacting. Drag these maximum. Because it's a blue sky, they tend to be super noisy. I can toggle open the advanced and go per color channel, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to click OK. And again, this is subtle. Actually, I'm going to hit Command 0 so I can fit it in the screen. And I'm going to click on this side over here, back to 400%. Do you see the noise when I turn off the stretched area, the part where I've gotten rid of the noise? See how the noise disappears? So that noise has been greatly reduced. Command 0. And now I have a really cool pano shot that I can use. I believe this particular shot needs a little bit of dodging in the foreground. So make sure you watch the part 2 of this video, which is called Dodging and Burning. Take care. Yes! I want to show you how to do some dodging and burning to make this print more exciting. I demonstrated how to stretch this image into a larger canvas size to create this pano in the previous video. Again, you can find the original image in the link in the description or from the course download folder. Once you have this image open, come over to your dodge and burn tools, which are right here. This area is from traditional film enlargers. When you dodge something, you prevented light from hitting the print, which made it lighter. If you're burning something, you gave extra light to the print to make that area darker. So I want to make the foreground a little lighter. So I'm going to choose dodge. Now, the really great thing about digital is I can choose where it's affecting the shadows, the midtones, the highlights. I can adjust the exposure, how intense of a dodge I'm doing. And I'm going to leave it at 40%, which is pretty heavy-handed. And I left protect tones check because I just thought like this foreground was a touch muddy, maybe this area. Now I can click on this side and hold down the Shift key and click on this side and it dodge a straight line all the way across. Do the same up here if I want to reduce that vignetting that was there. Maybe I'll do that at a couple of clicks right here just to make that little area brighter. Now maybe I made this part right here a little too bright. So I'd come back over to the burn tool. Still leave it on midtones and change my exposure to maybe 30%, and I'm dragging with scrubby sliders. You can actually come and just use a disclosure triangle and drag this slider or anything that has something that's adjustable in percentages, you can just hover over the word and your cursor will change into this little hand and pointer, which is called a scrubby slider. And I can just grab and drag here. So I'm going to drag that down to around 30%. If you need your brush bigger, you can choose this disclosure triangle and make the size bigger by dragging. Now the disadvantage here is I can't tell how big my brush is right now. I have to come all the way over to the image. Well, that's too big. Then I got to come back up and do this. That's too small. Do you see the problem with this process? It's an easy to use process, but let me show you something a little better. Instead of doing that, how about I just hit the right bracket key, or I hold it down to make it visually as big as I want it, or the left bracket key. These are beside the letter P on your keyboard. That really quickly gets me to the brush size that I want. And notice my brush numbers are changing as I tap the left or right bracket key. Again, right makes it bigger, left makes it smaller. I want to tap it to about right there. Burning, midtones, 34%. Just make this little area a touch darker. Now that seems like a little heavy-handed. I basically recreated the same problem. So I hit Command or Control Z, and then I'll come out and say, maybe that should be more like 15%. Make my brush a little smaller, and just do a nice soft pass right across there. Yeah, I think that looks a lot better. That's how you can use dodging and burning to change the appearance of an image, making it look the way you want. Now for me, I feel like the colors, are they too saturated? They could be. So let's add a hue and saturation adjustment layer just to take a quick look. Here's 0 saturation. Look at that posterization. We still have noise, even though this has been corrected for noise already. And we don't want our eyes to bleed, right? So it's got to be some balance. You figure out where your tastes lie. I'm gonna leave this one. I'm gonna leave this one here. Now, do I need an image that's as giant as this? Look how big this is. 136 megs. I do not. I don't need to waste my. This is only going to be resized to a very small thing to put on the web. So I'm going to go to image size, and I'm going to say, yeah, that's ridiculous. Let's go to pixels. I know I need nothing larger really than full HD, and full HD is 1920 on the widest dimension. So I can just type in 1920. My file size went from 136 megs to 3.53 megs, which is perfect. I'm gonna click OK. Now it looks super small, it's at 25%. If I hit Command 1, it is zoomed to 100%. So that's plenty for what I need for this project. Now I need to save it. Go to File, Save As. I'm going to Pano Small. Choose JPEG, sRGB. Click OK. Click OK. Now I've saved a nice small version of this. When I click this X to close it, it says, wait, do you want to make all these changes you made? And if I click Save, it's going to save this smaller PSD file. And I don't need it. I'm done everything I'm going to do. So I'm just going to click Don't Save. If you like this video, make sure you whack it, smack it, and crack-a-lack it. In the next 5 videos, I'm going to cover layers, which are the most important feature in Photoshop for photographers, artists, and designers. It's amazing how much it allows you to do. And I'm going to give you the introduction of how they function and work. I'm going to have a short video on how to add a black and white adjustment layer with some spot color. I'm going to show you how to fix a low contrast image with a levels adjustment layer, how to switch the colors in a scene with a hue sat adjustment layer, and then for the final one, it'd be a more complicated layer exercise of showing you the best and worst ways to bring one photo into another photo, and then how to add text, how to rotate, use layer styles, all to make a simple ad. So let's get started. Yes! In this video, I wanted to give you a quick introduction into layers. Layers are one of the most powerful features in Photoshop. You'll usually find it in the far right bottom area of your Photoshop work screen, right here. If you don't see a tab that says layers, just go up to Window and put a check mark beside layers. Mine is already open. Layers let you control very discrete items. Let me come over to the text tool right here. This is the horizontal type tool. I'll click it and I'll just drag some text right there. It automatically loads with some Latin space holder. And I can click the color here and change that to red. Click OK. Click this check mark to accept it. So now I have a text layer. See how that works? And then what if, for whatever reason, I needed an adjustment layer to change the color? Maybe I wanted to make it sepia. Well, let me choose this hue and saturation adjustment layer right here. And notice it populated in the properties tab. And maybe I'm going to just choose colorize, use a nice sepia, and keep my saturation somewhere like that. Or maybe I want it more of a cyanotype, which is kind of a bluer look that works nicer with the red text. So now I have text layer and I can make it disappear and reappear by turning on and off this eyeball so I can remind myself what a layer is if I forget, because I've got 20 layers or 200 layers. I think you can have up to 4,000 layers in Photoshop. And then here's my color adjustment layer. Now watch this. In the layers panel, we have control over how the layer interacts with the layer below it. Let me actually make that color a little crazy. Let me dial the saturation up to 100, which is way too much, right? But maybe I'm going for more of a artistic or graphic design interpretation, and that strong color cast is important. But let's say it is too much. All I have to do is lower the opacity, and that's going to let some of that background image through. A scrubby slider is when you hover over a word and your cursor changes to a left or right pointing arrow, and you just drag it back and forth to vary the opacity, which is very similar to just lowering the saturation. So I can lower the opacity, the strength of any layer. I can do it with this type layer. I can lower the opacity so it becomes more faded out, so I can see the background through it. So this is your layers panel, and it is, again, it is super powerful for allowing you to adjust very specific things in your image. So I don't need this text layer. So I can just click and drag it to the trash, and it'll get rid of it. I don't really need this adjustment layer. And actually, instead of clicking and dragging it to the trash, I can just click delete, but you gotta do it twice. I wanted to interrupt this regularly scheduled instructional video just to make sure I underline the point of how you can delete a layer. Let me actually hit Command or Control J, duplicate that a couple times. I'll hover between the layers panel and this properties panel so that I can make my layers panel bigger. Here's the thing, I did cover you can click and drag a layer to the trash, and it will automatically delete it. If you have an adjustment layer where the layer mask is automatically chosen, so it is possible to manually choose the adjustment itself, but by default, the layer mask is chosen, and you can tell because the whole layer is selected because of the highlighted layer area here where it looks like a lighter gray. But you notice there are two things on this layer, the adjustment and the adjustment mask, which is this white square. It's most selected because it has these white corners. If I select this has the white corners. When you're trying to delete an adjustment layer, when you hit the delete key the first time, it will delete the mask. If you want to delete all of it, you've got to hit the delete key a second time, which is why I just said in the movie, you got to hit the delete key twice. But that's just for an adjustment layer. Because again, if I were to hit Command or Control J a couple of times to have two more layers up here that have no layer mask, I can just hit the delete key once and that layer is automatically deleted. I hope that helps. And actually, instead of clicking and dragging it to the trash, I can just click delete. But you got to do it twice and it will delete it. Command 0 to fit in screen. And I'm back to the original image. Now what I want you to do for this particular image is add a blank layer, which is down here in the bottom of your layers panel. It's going to add a transparent layer. You can tell by how small this, actually that was a Freudian slip. I was just noticing my icons are small. I can change the appearance of my icons by clicking on these dialog lines over here in the layers panel, going down to panel options, and I'm just going to choose large thumbnail size. Click OK. Made these a lot bigger so you can see them better. You see how this is a transparent layer? Transparent layers are indicated by this white and gray checkerboard pattern all throughout Photoshop. Essentially, I want to get rid of this trash that's down here. Remember, you can hit that magnifying tool right here, the zoom tool, and click just to zoom in. Then I can hold the spacebar down to temporarily turn my cursor into a hand to kind of move it around. So what I want to do is I want to retouch out this paper bag. I'm going to choose the spot healing brush, which is right here. And all you do is you paint over the subject and Photoshop will automatically get rid of it. You remember our technique. You can come up here, drop down arrow and change the size of this tool, or you can just use the left and right bracket key. Left makes your brush smaller, right makes it bigger. So I'm going to paint that out. Now, if yours didn't work like this, it's probably because up here in the tool options bar, sample all layers wasn't checked. Whenever a tool isn't working, just look across the tool options bar and see what's going on. Because with sample all layers checked, it's going to look at that bottom background layer, but what it's doing, see, remember I'll turn that background layer off. See, it put the retouching in its own layer so I can mask it or do some other things to it if I need to. So now I can paint out, like, well, maybe I don't like any of these dots. Maybe this little white thing's a little distracting. I'm gonna hit Command or Control 1 to zoom to 100% because you really don't need to be more than 100% when you're retouching. Maybe I don't like that. Is there anything else I don't like? No, everything else looks good. I'm gonna hit Command or Control 0. Okay, so I've retouched it now, and I can name my layer. The way you name it is double click on the word in the layer. You'll get this blue field, and I'll type retouch. This way I can keep it orderly. This reminds me that if I turn this off, I can see what I've retouched. Notice the difference, how powerful that is. Basically, anything that you wouldn't put in the image yourself, consider removing it to tell a clearer story. Now, looking at this image photographically, I think this is too bright up here. I love the graphic elements. I love the strong visual of the diagonal line. I love that the face is in deep shadow. In this era of digital photography, where a lot of people teach, you've got to maintain maximum highlight detail and maximum shadow detail in every single image. I think it's good to try and make sure you have that detail recorded in your image file. If you know the look you're going for and you know you don't need shadow detail, I don't need to see his eyes, I want this to be more anonymous, I love the graphic elements in this image, then let those shadow details just fall away to black. That's perfectly okay. But I think this highlight area is a little bright. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to the adjustment layer. It looks like I don't have my full range of white tone, so I'll pull that in, but I'll pull my midtones down. I guess it'd be somewhere in there. It's always a balance because everything is getting adjusted. So now I have this layer, I can turn it on and off. And after I've done this, if I still don't think I've pulled down those lighter tones, come to the output slider instead and just pull down those lighter tones a touch. So now I can turn that on and off by toggling this eyeball on and off to see the effect. Yeah, that retouching is a necessity here. So if I want to save this with all of the work I've done, I will go up to File and Save As. It's going to automatically make it a .psd, even though this image was originally a JPEG, because it has layers. You can only save a file with layers as a Photoshop document. Side note, you can actually save it as a TIFF, but don't do that. I say don't do that because TIFF is primarily used for output to CMYK printing, like on giant printing presses. In today's market, you're either printing with an online lab, and you can still print great prints with a JPEG extension, and the .psd is just your best overall working extension because it allows you to open and save and rework and open and save and rework your images over and over, and you never lose image quality. If you were to keep opening a JPEG, doing stuff to it, saving that JPEG, then opening that same JPEG up and remanipulating it and resaving it, you're actually losing image quality every time you do that because it's a lossy compression extension, which is great for making a big file small, but it is not great for a file that you're going to be editing on and off over a long period of time. So that's why .psd is so great, because you do not lose any image quality at all, no matter how many times you open it, work on it, and save it. I want to save all the layers, leave that checked, and this is totally fine. I know this image is never going to print, and I'll click Save. I already have a version of this, so it's saying, hey, you already have this file as a PSD. Are you sure you want to save this? And I'll say, yeah, sure, go ahead. So I just saved this as a .psd with these revisions, which you should too. You'll need it for the project. Take care. In this video, I'm going to show you how to add a black and white adjustment layer to this image and then use the layer mask to do this. You can find this image in the link in the description or download it in the actual course. So once you have your image open, this is really straightforward. Just come over to the adjustment area. Because remember, these are non-destructive adjustments. So they allow future editing should you change your mind about something. So I'm going to add the black and white adjustment layer, which is this icon here. And remember, I can toggle my eyeballs on and off to see the effect of an adjustment, right? Or any layer. Now, essentially, I want the color from beneath to come through the eyes in this black and white conversion. This right here is a mask. It's a layer mask. And if it's a white mask, that means it's revealing everything on this layer. So this whole layer is about converting whatever's underneath to black and white. So it's revealing all of that black and white stuff. If I choose the brush tool right here, come over, I need to make this brush a lot smaller. And remember, that left bracket key will make it a lot smaller visually. Now, what if I also want to zoom in a bit? Because I'm only at 31% if I look down at the bottom left corner. So I'll grab that zoom tool. And actually, let's try a keyboard shortcut. If you hold the Command and Space bar for a Mac or Control and Space bar for a Windows user, it temporarily changes to a zoom tool, allowing me to zoom in. I can let go of just the Command or the Control key. Holding down the space bar still, my cursor quickly goes to the hand tool. Then I let go, and it goes right back to the brush tool. Essentially, I need to cut a hole in this layer to see the layer beneath. So black is in my foreground. If it's not, you can just click this foreground background reset swatch, and then you can change your color of what's in the foreground by clicking these double arrows. I need black in the foreground. I need black to paint on a white mask. I'm gonna make my brush a little smaller by using the left bracket key, and then I'm gonna click and paint. Now I wanna double check, because watch what happens if my hardness is at 100%. Yours may be at any variable here, and I'll do this side. Now I'm lucky that I have a hard edge of this dark circle around the eye, but if I didn't, this edge here would be pretty distracting. Typically, I like to paint most of the times with a hardness of 0. It really fades it out, so in case there's a problem, it makes it more subtle. Now, if I overpaint, like right here, all I have to do is come over to this left and right angle, click it, and it will swap the foreground and background colors. I have trouble coming all the way over here and all the way back. So I just keep my fingers over the keyboard because I know if I type the letter X, look at my foreground and background swatches. They change. They just switch back and forth constantly. So whenever I'm editing a mask, I'll quickly like type my X to, fix that. And then if I came out to here, I'll type X to get the white back, and I'll just quickly paint it out. It allows for very quick editing. And then if I take off too much, I'll type the X again and just put back what I messed up. Using that X key while you're painting on a layer mask is really quick. I'm gonna type Command or Control 0 to fit in screen. Now I have this image with some spot color. What I always have the freedom to do if I want to change the color of these eyes is I can add a hue and saturation layer above and just drag the hue, and I can change the actual color of the eyes to whatever I want. Feel free to choose whatever crazy eye color you would like for this particular image. I need to save it, so I can save my working file, go to Save, Save As. So you already know this part. You want to save it as a Photoshop file, which is .psd. This will be your working file. It will preserve all of your layers so you can come back and change or fix mistakes or make corrections or additions or alterations whenever you want. After you've saved it as a .psd, come back and also save it as a JPEG with that embedded color profile of sRGB, because that's perfect for the web. That's perfect for these project templates that you'll be submitting. And you know how to do all that by now, based on the other videos you've watched up to this point. Now here's another thing to think about. This is a really large file, right? 68 megs. That's pretty large. So remember your image size. You can always go up to image size and say, yeah, there's nothing I'm working on that needs to be bigger than 1920 in the width, which is full HD resolution. So now I need to save as. I could hit Command Shift or Control Shift S or just save as. Choose JPEG, and I would name this one underscore small or underscore 1920. Again, you choose your favorite way, your favorite workflow that works for you and use it consistently. Hope that helps. In this video, I'm going to show you how to fix a low contrast image with a levels adjustment layer. I'm going to take this image and make it look like this. By adjusting the contrast range, you can open this image and link in the description or from the course, or use your own. Okay, once you have your image open, wait, there's a bonus tip. Again, just to cover layer functionality even more, if you have a background layer, you can convert it to a regular layer. I can't do much to this background layer. Like I can't click and move it. Let me click. See, it's going to say you can't do that. You've got to convert it to a normal layer. I could have clicked that blue convert to normal layer, but you can just click this lock icon and it disappears and it converts the word background to layer 0. Sometimes that's beneficial. You may need that at times. This looks flat to me, visually flat. If I were to go up to Window and choose histogram, so what does that tell me? Got plenty of blacks. I'm clipping on the blacks, and it's okay where it's clipping. No problem with that. Got some midtones. I've got no whites or highlights, and I've got just the teeniest bit of all of these light tones. So obviously this is very flat. Okay, so let's talk photography terms real quick. When I'm talking about a flat image, I'm referring to contrast. You either have normal contrast, you have low contrast, which is considered a flat image, or you have high contrast. High contrast is lots of blacks and whites and very few mid-grays, and it looks like it has a lot of contrast. A low contrast or a flat image typically is missing white tones or black tones, or most usually they're missing both white and black tones. There are a lot of fixes for this, and I'm going to cover that in future videos in the following weeks. And the techniques are simply amazing. So stay tuned. Yes! Remember, flat photographically means you're either missing black, you're missing white. Most often you're missing both, but here I'm only missing one of them. So you think, oh, I need to adjust the image. So your instinct is to come over here to Image, Adjustments. It's like, well, what do I do to make it brighter? Well, I could use brightness and contrast and just say brighter and just drag that over, and that will work. And I can, well, that's too much contrast. Maybe I need to pull the contrast back down. Well, and you keep dragging. You're like, well, some parts look good, but then some parts look bad. Here's the thing with the brightness and contrast, it's a universal thing. It's like killing a fly with a hammer. The hammer is a one size fits all. It's going to work for some projects, and some projects it doesn't work well at all. So I'm going to cancel out of that. And I'm going to suggest use either levels or curves. Levels are the easiest ones to use in the beginning. So start off with that. And you think, okay, well, I need to adjust the image. So I'm going to go back to Image, Adjustments, and now I'll choose Levels. So you come over to Image, Adjustments, and you think, well, I was told Levels was the thing to use. But look at this exposure. Maybe I should just use that. So you click on exposure, and you think it just needs to be a little brighter. But this can work, but you see how it's starting to blow out some of the highlight areas now? It's like, well, maybe I just need to change the gamma, make it the midtones darker, or make them lighter. It's like, okay, now everything's way too flat and bright. Okay, that's too much contrast. I don't think I like that either. So I'm going to go back and do the levels adjustment, Image Adjustment, Levels. Now I have a histogram, so I don't even have to bother opening up this histogram because I get one built in with levels. Here's the simple thing to do. Whatever you're missing, just grab that slider and drag it to the base of the mountain. I don't need to grab my black point, right? Because it's already at the base of the mountain. Call this the mountain. Wherever this data lives is the mountain. Now, if I hold down the Alt or Option key and click on the black point slider, it's going to show me where the black is. Do you see that? See, that means that is all 100% zero black. 000 in the RGB channels, which is perfect for this image. But let me click on this white slider and hold down the Alt or Option key. Okay, now it's got to be the inverse. So this is where I have my first pure white and these little specks that don't really matter. So I have to come all the way here before I start getting a range of tones. Look how much better that looks. If I hold down my Alt or Option key, notice how the cancel button goes to reset? That way I can just reset it, and I can do it while I look at it. Just drag that down until the base of the mountain, and that quickly adjusts your contrast. Now this middle slider is for your midtone contrast. So you can kind of drag that backwards and forwards per the scene and to your taste. So I think I like that. The very whites right here. Click OK. Now if I were to save this and then I were to come back and open it in 5 minutes or in 5 days, and I'd say, oh, maybe I messed this up. Well, this adjustment has been permanently baked into the file. I can't change it without degrading the image quality. I can hit Command or Control Z, or remember you can go up to Edit and it will undo the last thing you did, which is undo levels. Because remember, everything here in this image adjustments, they're all destructive, which means if you save them, you can never undo them or alter them. But you get these same controls over here in this adjustment panel. And this is the icon for levels. If you just hover over an icon, it tells you what it is, but it doesn't take very long to remember. This looks like a mini histogram. So now it opened up my levels dialog box in the properties panel, and I get the exact same histogram I saw before. So I'm just going to drag that over to the base of the mountain, adjust this to taste, pull down on the whites a touch. I can turn my eyeball on and off to see if I like it. So now I'm going to save this for the project. I'm going to click File, Save As. And again, if I want to save my working file, which I can save it as a .psd. Right? I've already done that. If I'm ready for output, well, I need to save this as a JPEG, and it's way too big. Look at that, 51 megs. Why don't I just go ahead and go to Image, Image Size, and choose the width, enter 1920. In the width field, it automatically changed the height, made my file size a ton smaller. I'll click OK. Now I'll go up to File and Save As, and I'll choose JPEG. I'll highlight to the left of JPEG, and put 1920. Leave it as sRGB, click Save, OK at 12. Now when I click this one, it's saying, oh, do you want to close this before saving? No, because I've already done all my saving I need to do. Yes! I wanted to show you how to take this image and make it look like this, using the hue saturation adjustment layer. You can find this image in the link in the description or from the course itself, or you can use your own. Okay, once you have an image open that you want to shift the color of, for me, this orange, it just looks a little too washed out. I want it to be more dynamic. This image is for my website. It's not for a National Geographic article where color accuracy is important. So all I'm going to do is go up to the adjustment layer and choose the hue saturation adjustment layer. Notice what happens in my layer panel. Automatically adds the hue saturation adjustment layer with the layer mask that I can edit, and then the hue saturation adjustments opened up in the properties panel. Now remember, Saturation slider. That saturates the colors that exist. You can take it all the way until your eyes bleed. The photo colors are so garish. Sometimes that's appropriate for design and art, but you have to decide where you want it. If you totally desaturate it, it becomes a black and white. Side note, this is the worst way to make a black and white in Photoshop. Just throws away all your information and gives you no localized color control. I'm gonna take it back to about the middle, which was a 0, approximately 0. Instead, I wanna shift the hue. So I just grab the hue slider and I want to make everything more green. I want it to be almost uniformly green, although all these other colors are kind of cool. So I didn't get it that direction. So let me go back the opposite direction. Ooh, there's the green. If I go all the way over to see what I get, okay. Come up with some kind of a real rich green. And you don't need to make our eyes bleed, right? The normal color saturation is fine. I just wanted everything to have more of a green, kind of a green cast for the lizard. Can toggle that eyeball on and off. That's a very quick way to shift the hue of an entire image for some visual purpose. Make sure you save this as a smaller size JPEG. Remember, the way to resize a file is go to image, image size. I'm going to type 1920 because that's all I need for full HD. Click OK. Yes! Okay, now that you've learned all these interesting things about layers, I'm going to show you how to create a tennis advertisement that looks like this. So in Bridge, you have some options. I can select this image, double click it. It's going to open in Photoshop. I can come back down to Bridge, double click this image because it too is going to open in Photoshop. And then I've got to get this image over to the other one. A lot of ways to do it. For those of you that think, okay, I would just select all by hitting Command A, and then I would go over to Edit Copy or Command or Control C. And then I would go back to this image by clicking on the tab. Because remember, you can toggle between open images by clicking on the tabs. Come over here and hit Command or Control V or go down to Edit and Paste. Okay, now I need to resize it. So now I've got to go up to Edit and Resize, but I don't know exactly how big to make it. So, and then I think, well, actually I put the wrong one in the wrong image. So let me delete that. I really wanted to select all of this, Command or Control A. I wanted Command or Control C, down to Edit Copy, come back to this image, and I really wanted to paste that image into this one because this is the background image. So I go up to Edit and Paste. Okay, now it's too big. So now I've got to go up to Edit and Transform, which you've already learned how to do, and leave it on scale. And I need to drag it, move it, drag it, move it, drag it, move it, lock it down, and I can now manipulate it. Do you see how many steps that took? I mean, you can get there. One thing, when you copy and paste from one image into the other, this is a big file. How big is that file? That's a 71 meg file. Photoshop saves the last 50 things you did. So that means a 71 meg file has been copied into my RAM, onto my clipboard, and it's wasting my RAM. If you do this a lot, like you work on 10 images and you copy 10 things in 10 images, so now you have your RAM clogged down with all this copied stuff that doesn't need to be there, right? Wait, there's a bonus tip. Yes! If you ever do notice your Photoshop acting slow or something, just go up to Edit and go down to Purge and choose All. Basically, that's going to throw away all your clipboard stuff. Nothing permanent, just all the stuff you've been copying, and it'll make it work a little bit faster. Now I'm going to hit Delete for that, because I want to show you a quicker way. Command D to deselect. Remember, you can find that here, Select, Deselect. What I can also do is with the Move tool is just click on that layer, whether it's a background layer or another layer, drag it. I'm holding my click. I'm dragging it over the tab of where I want it to go. And once that image opens, I've got to drag it down into that image. And now look what I have the ability to do. Now I still have to go to Edit and Transform and resize this. But that's saved on clogging up your RAM. But let me show you a better way. I'm going to shut this down. Don't save. Don't save. I'm going to go back to Bridge. What I'm going to do is hold the Command or Control key and select both of the images that I want. Go up to Tools. Go down to Photoshop and let Photoshop do the work for me. Load files into Photoshop layers. That way I've wasted no RAM, and it's going to load everything into the files for me. Now I can, instead of going up to Edit and Transform and choosing Scale, I can just hit Command or Control T for free transform, right? Command minus to fit in screen if I couldn't see my bounding box. And it's going to automatically hold my aspect ratio. If I hold my Shift key, I can make it skinny or stretched. But typically you want it to stay the way you want it to stay. So I'll put it something like this. This is similar to the ad that we were trying to make. And try to match it to that ad in the sample. Let me take a look at that sample. There we go. right here. And actually, I'll go ahead and open that so I can, oh, actually, it's not gonna let me do anything until I accept this. Let me accept that. All right, so there is the rough add. So I've got a stroke, a drop shadow. Let me go ahead and do that part. So I'm gonna click this to make sure that inset photograph that I just loaded into this file, any of the ways I showed you to do it. I showed you 3 different ways. I'm gonna go down to FX and I'm gonna choose stroke. It's gonna open up a layer style dialog box with the stroke automatically selected. Now, if I drag the size up, notice it's putting the stroke on the outside, noted by the rounded corners. I don't want that. I want straight corners like a old photograph. So I'm gonna choose inside. It's gonna crop into my photograph, so I don't want that size to be too large. Just large enough. I don't want it to be too skinny, because that's too skinny. And this is too large, right? So do something that has a nice aesthetic balance. I'd say something like this looks appropriate. Now I want this fill color. I think that white is just too white. So I'm gonna click the color here. It's gonna give me a color picker, but I don't have to choose a color in here. I mean, I can choose red, I can click on blue, I can click on green, I can drag this slider to wherever I want it. But I can also hover outside of the color picker and notice my mouse automatically turn into an eyedropper. And I can say, yeah, I want to stay with the color harmony of this tennis ball. Perfect. Click OK. Click OK. Now I have a stroked image. It's like, wait, I forgot to put a drop shadow. Oh yeah. All you have to do is come back to this effects, which you can turn those effects on and off to look at them, but that's okay. If I want to reopen that layer style dialog box, I just click on the word effects. Can't click once. Got to double click. I'll choose drop shadow. Let's adjust the distance, the size, the opacity. I need to change the angle so I can see it. Do you see it right here? Remember, you can click over here in the image and just pull that shadow wherever you want. Let me look. Okay, the shadows are going this way. I mean, obviously, this has nothing to do with that real live sun, but I'll try to mimic that a little bit. Maybe make the spread and the size a little more, but maybe the opacity should be a little more transparent, kind of like the sample. I'll call that okay. So what did the other one look like? Well, it looks like I'm about this close, right? And it's rotated. So let's rotate it. How do we rotate an individual layer? That's a great thing. Remember, I've already changed the individual size of this individual layer. Oh, is this transparent background bothering you? It's bothering me, but we know how to fix it, right? Just hit C for the crop tool. This found right here. Remember to make ratio is chosen to free transform a crop. And just grab on the bottom and drag up until you've cropped out all those transparent pixels. Click enter, command 0 to fit in the screen. We're good to go. Now, while that inset photograph has been selected, you know that you can go to edit and free transform, or you can just hit command or control T, which is a keyboard shortcut. You see the bounding box that automatically activated? I can hover outside and you see how my cursor changes? When you're outside that corner and you get it to change, just click and drag to the side. Maybe it needs to be a little smaller just to kind of align with the other ad. Let me take a look at the other ad.
It was at this moment that Jonathan knew he f***ed up.
You see, if you click away from one image into another with the free transform not activated or entered, you lose it. So you've got to start all over again. Yeah, that looks about right. Command T, make it a little smaller, hover outside the corner, rotate it. Okay, I'm going to lock it in by hitting enter this time. So when I go back and look at this, okay, I see I have a lot of stuff on the outside here. Now, what else do I need? I need to add text, tennis lessons with an outside stroke, it looks like. So let's go back to the layer we're working on. You can just come over to the horizontal type tool, click it, click and drag a box, set your type size to 60. Chances are your color's probably either white or black. So I'll just set it to black and I'll type tennis lessons. Okay, that's too small. I'm not gonna be able to read that dark text against that dark background. So let's go ahead and hover over the text size button, because right now it only goes up to 72 and I don't know what number is going to work. So this is where I like to just hover over the word and drag left or right to make it bigger. And I'll click the move tool to lock it in. I'll click on that text just to move it around. It's too dark, right? So if I double click on that text icon in the layers panel over here and I come back to the tool options bar at the top, click on that color swatch, and I don't need to do it in the color picker. I'm just going to hover with my eyedropper over that stroked image to make sure I get that exact color. Click OK. And this time I'm going to choose the check mark to lock it in. Okay, that's looking good, but I want a stroke on it. So I'm going to come back to this FX choice at the bottom of my layers panel, and I'm going to choose stroke. but I don't want it to stroke with that color. Here, I actually do want it to stroke with white. So I'll click on that color icon, choose the white in the upper corner, click OK. I don't want it to be inside because that hides all of my color. So for this instance, I will choose outside. Okay, that looks a little cartoonish. So let's make the size a little lower. Something like that, so it's still legible. Click OK. Command 0 to fit in screen. Now what was the other thing? Ah, it's a square. This add is a square. So let's go crop to a square. We've already learned how to do that. Choose the crop tool, which is right here, and go up to ratio and choose 1:1 square. That way it automatically gets it ready for you. And click inside the image and just drag it to where appropriate. I'll hit Command minus just to get more of my image in the screen. I'm gonna click OK. Okay, I don't think I'm doing too good. This corner is touching here, which is visually distracting. Let me go look at the one I'm supposed to be matching. Ah, that does have a nicer negative balance feel. I think my inset image is bigger too in proportion. Like count your strings. 1, 2, 3, 4. Basically, I cropped it to the 5th string. Where did I crop it here? Well, I cropped it in to the 4th string here. So basically, I just cropped it too much. So I can hit Command or Control Z to undo that. Click inside the image. Now, where's that 5th string? Right there. So that's where it's saying I should crop based on counting the strings. So I'll click Enter. So that was the problem. Basically, this image was too big. Can I now resize this image by selecting it, hitting Command or Control T, and making it small? I can't, because when I cropped it, I cut off the edge of that image, which I don't want to do. I've got a Command Z or Control Z to undo that. I've got a Command Z or Control Z to undo this. And actually, I just need to get out of this crop tool, make sure I'm on that image, hit Command or Control T, and make this image just a little smaller. Now I'll hit the crop tool. These are the things that you're going to face. Select inside the image, drag it to that 5th line, because I want you to match it as much as you can. And now you can crop in from the bottom. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to go back to the move tool. I'm going to click on that image because I can move it. And I'm going to move it to about where I think it fits nicest and looks closest to this image. That looks pretty good. It doesn't have to be perfect, but that looks good. Got a little negative space over here. Now I need to save it. So I can go to File, Save As. I can save my working file as a .psd. After you've done that, you can come back and save it as a JPEG, naming it whatever you want. But remember, you don't have to save these giant files. If you're done working, go to Image Size, change the width to 1920, which is full HD, which is all you'll need for this project. Click OK. Now I'll go save it as a PSD, then save it as a JPEG. The reason you're saving it as a PSD is in case you notice a problem later. Like let's say you save this. How about we just do it? I'll just come up and click Save As. Now notice it didn't pre-populate with one of the file names because this is the one where we went to Bridge and told Bridge to load them both together. When it does that, it comes up with its own untitled name. I would come up with some sophisticated name here like that, so I know exactly what I'm doing. I would save it as a .psd to maintain all my work. Now the reason I did that, remember you can always come back to your most recent image. It'll save it right here. If you ever want to get rid of these, like they're distracting, all you have to do is go up to File, Open Recent, and come down to Clear Recent File List. But now I do need to go find it. There you go. There's that sophisticated title. I'll double click it because now I can say, oh, I think this should really be moved a little over, and I think that drop shadow is too far over. So I'm going to double click on the drop shadow part and maybe change the distance and the spread, and maybe the opacity should be a little more. And click OK, and click Command S, and that's going to save that working PSD, but I still need to edit it for project template, so I'd still need to go back and resave it as a JPEG. You see how that worked? Boom. Okay, all done. Hope that helps. Hey, thanks for spending an hour and a half with me learning Photoshop. I love it. This basic Photoshop for photographers and artists course has really helped you develop some core skill sets to be able to make some of the images that you want to make. This course is just the first in a long series of longer form based courses that you will find in the particular playlist here. And as always, I have very small modular topic based videos on my channel as well. Please like and subscribe if this helped you in any way. I want to share my enthusiasm for Photoshop with as many people that want to learn it for free as possible. And that only happens if you like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the stuff that you have to do to get the YouTube algorithms to share this with other like-minded people. I have links in the description of how you can share your work on Instagram or Flickr or create an Adobe Spark page that you can link back inside the YouTube comments. this is really just starting off now. So at the time I'm recording this, there's hardly anything being shared, but I really encourage you to be one of the first sharers. I think that a like-minded community of creators can nurture and support and help each other in a pretty significant way. So I encourage you to engage. And remember, don't let perfect be the enemy of good.
Yes!
If you like this video, make sure you whack it, smack it, and crack-a-lack it.
Yes!
Hey, what are you still doing here? It's over. Actually, all kidding aside, I hope this video helped. And if it did, consider subscribing. I like subscribers.
That's awesome! What? You just took one in the jugular, man! Whoa! Yes! Oh my god, I did! This is
Hey, you stayed to the end. You know what that means? You're awesome. I'm talking about you. Now get out of here.